Hello and welcome to TruckWorld TV, the UK's only TV series dedicated to commercial vehicles.
On this week's show from our base here at Junction 38 Westmoreland Services, we've got a review of the latest tractor unit from DAF. We've also got highlights of the recent Moscow Motor Show, and we'll be looking at tachographs and discussing their impact on the industry.
But to start us off this week, we're going to look at servicing and MOTs of commercial vehicles. And this is an area where cars and commercial vehicles are very similar, but there are some very important differences.
The MAN Truck and Bus Centre in Trafford, Manchester is one of the largest commercial vehicle dealerships in Europe. And although it's best known as the place to buy new and used MAN trucks, it's the service and MOT centre that we've come to have a look at. Not only are the trucks serviced here, but there's also a VOSA testing bay on site, which means there's a constant stream of vehicles from all manufacturers being maintained and repaired, as well as having that all-important annual VOSA MOT test carried out.
We're quite a big workshop. We're probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest in the UK within the MAN group. By the facilities you see, we cover all aspects of routine maintenance, repair. We like to think there's nothing can come into this dealership that we can't resolve, whatever the problem may be. We've got designated diagnostic bays, which is solely for diagnostics. We have designated inspection bays, nice and silent in there, no workshop noise, so you can pick up air leaks and stuff like that. We're quite comprehensive with what we do. And then anything that needs to come into the main workshop will be booked in under the normal process in the main workshop. So in other words, if somebody comes in, it's just a fuse blown, we hope we can find that within minutes and people go on the way. But anything that needs to come into the workshop comes in to this facility here, which is the main workshop. Trucks are much more now, they're more complex, there's a lot more diagnostic work. They're much more reliable. Every manufacturer is going to tell you that, and it's the truth. The trucks are much more reliable now. Driven properly, routine maintenance carried out correctly, the truck can go for forever virtually, to be perfectly honest with you. So yes, it has changed dramatically how we look after vehicles now. And obviously the rules and regulations, VOSA rules and regulations, SLPs, safe load pass for petroleum vehicles and such like, have got that much more stringent and grew that we've had to grow with them.
A lot of people don't realise that trucks and cars have completely different service schedules. When you're applying for a truck licence or an operator's licence, the Traffic Commission looks at the jobs that you're doing and determines when you should have your services and inspections, more importantly. They can range from anything from 4 weeks, if you're doing a really arduous job, up to 8 weeks. The norm is about 6 weeks. That means that every 6 weeks that truck has to actually be inspected over and above the service levels as well, and at the end of it also doing your plating or MOT as you get normally. This also means the fact that if they find anything wrong with it, it's got to be done. There's no escaping it. And of course nowadays, with everything being online and the ability for the traffic commissioners and VOSA to have a look at the service levels, they can check if a vehicle, without actually going physically to the workshop, they can check whether that vehicle's been serviced and maintained correctly. This is the sort of place where this goes on.
And it's not just conventional vehicles that are serviced here, but also military and medical spec vehicles. And the vehicle diagnostic work isn't the only aspect of the job that has been computerised. It's now the whole service timeline as well.
We've gone away from a lot of written exercises now. It's more and more electronic basis on like service sheets. We have a system here called the workshop, where it's put on the system. The technician goes up to the designated job, picks off the job number, the job number or vehicle registration, and he enters all in literature, what he finds on a vehicle from an inspection, onto the computer. The easiest jobs we get is run-of-the-mill servicing, basically. Yeah. The hardest jobs we get is where a driver comes in, I've got a misfire, and that misfire can end up a major engine job. So that you have like a diagnostic time. You look on the diagnostics. Then you go to the computer, you're looking at, we have what we call an FSP file, we download that. We have a look at what information is in on that, so it's all based on computer and the computers that are on the vehicle, basically.
Now, another difference between cars and trucks is cars, you go, get MOT, you take it there, you wait for the call, yes, it's failed, or no, it hasn't, whatever. On trucks, because of the costs, if you like, what you do is you do it the other way around. So what I do is, and certainly I've got a horse box, it's a 7.5 tonner, and what I'll do is before I actually go and have the MOT plating and the test, I'll take it to the service and say, right, okay then, have a look round it, I've had it serviced, but there are extra bits that aren't on the service that they look for at the authorised test facility and say, right, go round it, tell me, is there anything that could fail? They'll have a look and say, yeah, maybe this might do. So we do the work first of all, and then we take it across. Now here, this is the good thing about having a service workshop and an authorised test facility. Instead of taking it now another 10, 15 miles down the road, what they do is they take it all the 10 or 15 feet just across to the next workshop.
Now, in the life of a truck, once a year one of these bays is a little bit more important than the others. And that's this one at the end, number 21, because that's the Vosa bay where the truck is tested to get its plate or its MOT certificate. Now, the test is pretty stringent, and you've got to say that's a good thing, because with some of these vehicles weighing up to 44 tonnes, you don't want a loose track rod end or some duff tyres or brakes to slip through the net. With most vehicles needing an annual MOT, these guys are kept pretty busy and on average carry out over 700 tests a year. Now, this is one part of the procedure that is actually not too different from a car test, in that they look at a lot of basic things like lights, indicators, brake lights, headlamps, are they aligned, are the fog lamps, side lights working, that sort of thing. But then when you get onto things like the tyres, it gets a bit more involved. They're checking not that they're just the right size, but also the correct load bearing, which is on a big vehicle is absolutely essential. Then there's the rollers, where they're checking for brakes, a traditional sort of brake test. But again, when they go onto the larger tractor units, they'll put a trailer on there and simulate the pull to make sure that the brakes are working, not just when the tractor unit's uncoupled, but also when it's got a fully loaded trailer on it. There are a lot of visual tests as well, not only for steerage, linkage, things like that, but also with the braking systems that are under a lot of pressure. Get your head, get your ears right in there, look for leaks, that sort of thing. Now, some of the vehicles we've seen today, well, they're quite clean, but if a really old or a vehicle that's been working in a real dirty environment comes in, it's not Vosa's job to clean it off, it has to be presented in a way that it can be tested. So if you roll up in a truck with 4 inches of mud or offal or Lord knows what stuck to it, don't just think you're going to waltz in and get a certificate. You're going to take it away, jet wash it off, and then bring it back. And then hopefully you'll get the clean bill of health and that MOT certificate that you need. Now, although the guys here at MAN own this lane, it is operated by Vosa. And Vosa, well, some people give them a lot of stick, say they're interfering, but at the end of the day, if this is a safety issue, if they're making sure that anything that's on our roads is safe and is running to regulations, then that's got to be a good thing. I'm sure you've all enjoyed the recent Winter Olympics in Russia, but there was another event there not so long ago that Tim went along to that was right up our street, and that was the Moscow Motor Show. So Tim, you've been to pretty much every motor show around the world. What's Moscow like?
Moscow, completely different. No, unbelievable. It's a bit of Europe, a bit of Japan, and a little bit of everything else as well.
And in terms of the vibe at the show and how it's presented, is it very different to what we might be used to?
Yeah, well, it's a mixture of vans and trucks, but the important thing is you've got like American trucks there, and you've got Hyundai tractor units. You just don't see those in Europe. It's quite interesting.
And why is there such a mix of manufacturers? I mean, I've been lucky enough to travel to Russia and over to Mongolia. I noticed the further east you go, you start to see a lot more Japanese vehicles coming in. Obviously, you're getting further away from the European market. Is that why? Is it a melting pot?
Russia is right in the middle between Europe and Asia, and so you get a real big mixture between the two. And obviously China in the last 5 and 10 years has been phenomenal, so that's also encroaching on that. So it's a little, really, like you say, a melting pot of everything.
And is there a buzz about the place? Because again, our motor shows, we know there's razzmatazz and a good vibe about them.
Yeah. There's it is an international motor show, and it's everything you expect, whether you're going into the States or whether into Europe. You get the same sort of level of sophistication as well.
So, were there what particular things did you see that the
Hyundai tractor unit? I thought tractor unit from what is perceived as a car maker in Europe is quite nice to see.
Yes, I'm a car man. I know Hyundai quite well. Why have I never thought of them as commercial vehicle manufacturers?
Mainly because they're not over in Europe at all. It's a bit like all the truck manufacturers, you know. You go down to somewhere like Brazil, Volkswagen have got the Constellation, massive truck. You talk to people about Volkswagen, they think, oh, just cars. No, there are many car manufacturers that go around the world and actually produce trucks, but they just don't produce it in Europe because it's quite a sophisticated market for Europe, and maybe they're less sophisticated, they can get away in different markets, and Russia is obviously one of those sort of markets.
And if you were a haulier in Russia, how would you be looked upon if you had a fleet of American trucks and not a fleet of Russian trucks? You get the idea, you might be penalised extra taxes for those.
I wouldn't like to comment on the on that side of it, but yeah, I think it's quite interesting on truck drivers. The thing is, the Russians at the moment is, they want a premium truck, you go for the European stuff. And that obviously, and the problem you've got is the Russians at the moment are looking at China on one side, Europeans on the other, and they're really suffering a little bit.
Well, that's it for part one, but join us after the break when we've got Tim's test of the new DAF XF, and we'll also be discussing tachographs. See you soon.
Hello and welcome back to TruckWorld TV from our base here at Junction 38, T-Bay Services.
And now it's time for this week's road test, which comes courtesy of the DAF XF. Tim, as ever, has been down to Millbrook working very hard and has been putting it through its paces.
As everybody in the truck industry is well aware, we've recently undergone the change from Euro 5 to Euro 6 emissions. That's meant that the truck manufacturers have redesigned the chassis. They've also taken the opportunity to either redesign the cab or put a new cab on top. DAF has been one of the last to the market with this. They've redesigned the cab and they've redesigned the chassis. But is it a case of saving the best till last? One of the more striking trucks on the road today, the new XF has been cleverly designed to not only look good, but to also use clever aerodynamics to aid efficiency. The corner wind deflectors, for example, help to keep the door mirrors and handles clean. DAF and the design engineers are masters of the facelift. Why do I say that? Well, believe it or not, underneath this ultra-modern looking truck is a cab structure that's over 25 years old. But the power behind the new XF is a range of brand new PACCAR MX units. The engine delivers 410 horsepower to 510 horsepower in the flagship model.
So 510 horsepower. We're linked also to a 12-speed Acertronic gearbox. We're going up the hill here now, pulling about 1500 revs, and I'm going to drop it down to about 1000. And this engine is so torquey that we can actually pull the 40 tons, we've got 44 tons, and we're actually accelerating. And that tells you the sort of power that's behind this vehicle. As I said, we're around about just over the 500 horsepower, so though we're just slightly more than the norm. UK, we're looking at 450 to 500 horsepower. This is slightly just over, but it makes a heck of a difference when you're going up the hill. We're going downhill now, and we've got the engine brake on. This thing is virtually pulling me backwards. Some of the competition that I've driven recently, we found out the fact that it not really that effective, the engine braking system. Here on this DAF, I must admit, it's probably one of the best I've had. Going downhill, it looks like someone's actually put a parachute behind me and is pulling me backwards, and that's what you want. The least amount of time that you need to use a service brake means better reliability and also reduced costs.
And it's costs that are all important for hauliers today. Yes, it's great that the truck looks good and makes your driver happy, but it also has to save you money at the pumps, so cutting-edge technologies and clever aerodynamics that can save points of a gallon are essential.
Look inside the cab. First of all, there's a lot of walnut, and you either like walnut or you don't like walnut, and that's up to you entirely. Personally, I find it a little bit dark. Having said that, the grey interior lightens it up, and it needs it. I think they've thought that the fact that if you had a dark interior with the walnut, I think I'd feel a bit depressed, to be honest. But with the grey, we're lightened up. Actually, inside, when you look at it, it's a nice blend of traditional, if you like the traditional side in terms of the walnut, and then you've got the technology side where the instrument panel, again, is virtually all electronic. And also, interestingly enough, it's got this little reward system that helps the driver. If you're driving economically, then you get a little tick inside that says, hey, you're doing all right. And let's face it, when these trucks are doing 8, 9, 10 miles a gallon if you're really lucky, and with fuel costs on a truck
on average £100,000 per annum, then anything that can help the strapped driver and owner of the vehicle to save a little bit of money in terms of better fuel economy can only be a good thing.
The chassis on the XF has also been reworked to give better weight distribution and rigidity, so that not one of the 510 horsepower goes to waste.
We're inside the Super Space cab. Well, this is the top of the range cab, and as you can see, you've got some great, you can actually stand up inside this cab, and this is meant for really being away maybe a week, doing runs from UK down to Spain or Turkey or something like that. So hey, this is a classic vehicle for the job. If you've got two people in here, you won't feel claustrophobic, and you can stand up, get changed, and a really, really good cab for this sort of work. As far as driver's concerned and driving position, you've got steering wheel, everything's on there, multifunction steering wheel, in things like cruise control are available, and the seat itself, very comfortable. Not leather, just a cloth seat, but really comfortable, again quite wide, and you've got the traditional armrest as well. At the side of me, right to my arm there, I've got the drive for the Acertronic gearbox, so everything falls to hand. It's really well set up for a driver and very, very comfortable.
That's it for our look at the new DAF XF. I love the semi-wraparound dash, but also it's a nice blend of technology as well, and I'm sure it's going to be a great hit with many of its traditional customer base.
Now, one thing that all the trucks we've tested this series have in common, and all the trucks on our roads have in common, or should have in common, is a little box in there, the tachograph machine. Now, I've picked up from some drivers, they won't say it on camera, but it's a spy in the cab, it's a bad thing, but generally I think people are saying it's a good thing. But Tim, what's your view on it, and explain a bit more about what it does?
Let me say, it was introduced as a spy in the cab, so that's the big problem you've got, is when it first started it was a spy in the cab. But I think it's good, it's there to monitor your driver's hours, working time directives, things like that, and it's there also to show the fact that, hey, drivers, we don't want people driving trucks 14, 15 hours a day, because these are big trucks, 44 tons, and you've got to look at that and say, hey, you know, you've got to be alert, especially in today's driving conditions. So yeah, you've got to monitor, you've got to have your 15, 20 minutes, you've got to have your hour, and so that people on the road, and certainly car drivers and all the other motorists, can be aware of the fact that, hey, that guy's taking his rest and should be alert, and that's a good thing.
Well, that's our view of it. Now, recently we went to talk to a tachograph expert, Guy Reynolds, to get the industry view, and he also explained some of the areas where drivers do get caught up in monitoring their hours.
The main tachograph issues from a driver's perspective is really understanding the intricacies of driver's hours law and what they can and can't do. Sometimes that can be driven from the type of work that they're actually doing, whether they're doing multi-drop work or long trunk runs along the motorway. But it's interesting from the driver's CPC point of view that actually some of this now is the first time that drivers have ever had any professional training above and beyond initially passing their test. So because of the knowledge that they're now gaining and actually understanding what they can and can't do within the legislation, this has actually given them the opportunity to go back to the traffic office, go back to their traffic manager and actually question them and say, is this right? Am I actually allowed to do this? Because whilst it's the responsibility of a diligent operator to keep his drivers or her drivers within the driver's hours law, at the end of the day, the drivers themselves are now actually understanding the wider implications and what could happen to them at the roadside with roadside enforcement. Especially now in recent years with the advent of graduated fixed penalties and what the cost could be to them as a driver. I think there are some operators out there that should be running tachographs that aren't. There's some that all blatantly flout the law and know exactly what they're doing. Having said that, I think there are quite a few out there that should be using tachographs and simply by ignorance aren't using one. But actually there's a slightly bigger issue out there that's been discussed within the EU a number of times, which is vans. There's 7 vans out there for every commercial vehicle, heavy commercial vehicle.
and they're deregulated. They don't have tachographs. There are many groups of people that believe that they should come under full tachograph regulations, but they don't. But that's always going to be up for debate at the moment.
Well, we've said it throughout the series, but the opinion that matters most is that of the drivers who are using this technology on a daily basis. So earlier, we nipped out to the truck stop here at T-Bay and put that question to the drivers. What do they think of tachos?
Tachographs, yeah, very good thing, because to be honest, employers would have people working round the clock 24 hours a day if they thought they could get away with it. It's good for us drivers, but at the same time you could be very short distance to go to get home, and that short distance is just you've run out of time, so you have to stay another night, whereas you could be in your own bed, sleeping at home, having a nice meal.
My views on tachographs is, yeah, they are a good thing, keep everything in line, and hopefully it stops all the cowboys running over and making a fool of the industry, really.
Provided you're working legal, they're absolutely brilliant. Yeah, should I'm fine. I've got one of these new type in that go by the minute, which are far easier. I had one of the first ones, and they were a bit. They eat mileage up quicker than but this new ones are far more positive on your driving, so it's fine.
It's a lot easier now with the digicards. You can monitor your hours a lot easier, and I think it's better for the industry to limit the hours that drivers do, because less fatigue, and you just get on better.
Tachographs, I'm going to be honest with you now, it's the best thing that's ever happened, because we know we've got to do everything right and within the law.
Well, I think that's something of a record, mate. I think it's the first time we've had a unanimous decision.
Yeah, on camera.
Yeah, it was certainly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Dead right.
Well, that's it for this week, but don't forget you can check out our website at TruckWorldTV.co.uk. There's lots more features on there and information, and also competitions to win some truck-related goodies. And of course, follow us on Twitter as well and give us your views of what you'd like to see in the programmes. So until next week, thanks for watching. See you soon.
See you. Bye.
TruckWorld is the UK's only dedicated TV series for the road transport sector. If you are watching this and have a product or service that can help transport operators, then go to our website www.truckworldtv.co.uk to find out how easy and cost effective it is to advertise on TruckWorld TV.